Great. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Planning and Heritage Committee meeting, Tuesday, June the 4th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts today? Seeing none, can I have an approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Councillor McCabe. And adoption of the minutes from our last meeting of Tuesday, May 16th. Moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, seeing none. Before we move on to discussions, I just want to let everyone know that we do have our director online, Mike. So you can hear us, Mike?
I can. Thank you, Deputy.
Wonderful. Okay, so reports and discussions. Our first one over to you, Donna, the RHI contract amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose of this report is to facilitate a request that was made by the Ministry of Housing, Land and Communities, and it's in regard to our agreement through the Rapid Housing Initiative program that we have with the CMHC. So as part of this agreement, the developers are required to provide accessible units per the accessible standards. And the request is now being made to reduce the accessible units within the proposed 82-unit housing development to 15% of the total units. So that will equate to 12 units. We discussed this with the CMHC, and it is in accordance with the agreement that was signed between CMHC and the City of Charlottetown on February 13th, 2023. Given this, we are recommending that the committee asks Council to approve the amendment to allow the housing development to provide 15% of the total housing units as accessible units.
Okay, thank you for that. And any questions? Councillor Beck?
Yeah, thanks for that, Donna. What was did we have was there a previous allotment of what the accessible units were supposed to be? Or are we reducing it from, I don't know, 25% or 30%? Or is this just a number that we wanted to put in that aligns with the CMHC standards? Like, did we have when we went through this, or I think it was Sue who created this, was it not? Or worked on this, when it was going through, did we say that there was going to be, instead of 12 units, there was going to be, I don't know, 18 units or something like that? Or was there a different number beforehand?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Beck. So the original contract allowed for 15% in addition to what the province allows as their accessibility standard. So this now will reduce it to 10%, and that is the province's accessibility standard plus 5%. So that means that they are in accordance with what is allowed per the standard. So originally they were going to go 15% above what is required, but they've now reduced it to what the province is allowed, which is 10% plus 5%.
Okay, so if we were going with that, right now we're at 15%, 10 plus 5. Mm-hmm. Were we originally at 20% or 25? You said you were 10% above. Were we at 20?
15% above. They were allowed to go 15% above the allowable accessibility standard,
which is 10%.
Which is 10%.
Okay, so they were allowed to go up to 25%, which would have been on a, what do we have, 82-unit building? Is that, am I correct? 82 unit. So 20 of those could have been, but now we're reducing that potentially 20 units to 12, which aligns with, actually exceeds the provincial and aligns with CMHC.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Madam Chair, just to follow up on that, so I asked this question before we started. That was the first issue I looked at when I opened this last night. So originally, I think for the 82 units, the province, in cooperation with the city, I think they were looking at 20 units. Donna, is that right? No percentage, just, I think there was a number there, was there not? In the original agreement?
The original agreement only spoke to the percentage, so they were supposed to be 15% above the provincial allotment or requirement per the accessibility standards.
Yeah, but we're keeping within the standards by going
We
this
are
way.
within the standard.
And Madam Chair, can I just ask this question? Do we have a bylaw, do we have any bylaws in the municipal zoning development bylaw that pertains to accessibility units over, let's say, over a multi-unit apartment building that has over 42 units, you have to provide X number of accessible units? Do we have that, Donna?
It would be in accordance with what the province allows.
Oh, so we follow the provinces?
We follow the accessibility standards that's outlined for the province of Prince Edward Island.
And is that above, when you build a multi-unit apartment complex, 40 units? What's the threshold where a developer must have?
10%
Yeah,
of the,
what number, does that start at 12 units? Let's say if I have a 12-unit apartment building, do I have to provide 10%, 1.2 apartments or one apartment?
it depends on what the apartments are being allotted for in terms of affordability as well, because that's part of the whole procedure in working out what is the requirement. But for this one specifically, through CMHC, they had a requirement that we had to stick to, and that's what this is.
Okay. And this is just the last question, Madam Chair. So should we not look at this as part of a comprehensive review of our OP and zoning development bylaw, that we should have a number required for accessibility, affordability? But I've heard this before. I heard it at the door, like, do we have anything in place? But what you're saying is we're only following the provincial standard.
At the moment, that's what we follow.
And is there a possibility in your mindset, or that we should incorporate it in our own zoning development bylaw?
As we go forward, the mandate of the official plan is that we consider inclusivity, and inclusivity also includes the needs of disabled individuals within the city. And so this is something that we will consider, and we've already considered some of the policies that we will incorporate to ensure that this portion of the population is accounted for.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else have any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Beck.
Well, just so I'm sure, so I think we're exceeding provincial standards here, 15%, because the provincial standard is 10. So I think we were very much exceeding it at 25% previously, but we're still, even at what we're at with this proposal here, we're still exceeding the provincials, or the province is really exceeding themselves, or we're exceeding ourselves here in terms of the accessibility standards,
Yes, we are.
just so we're clear.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it's 10
All right.
plus 5.
Point, Madam Chair. Hopefully this is the last hurdle. We have to jump on this, because my understanding, this project was to start last November and hopefully be finished by this November, but hopefully this is the last hurdle, because there is a dire need out there to get those units up. And that's not up to you, that's up to government. Thank you.
Great. So if there's no other questions, staff is recommending that council approves a request to amend the city's Rapid Housing Initiative agreement to allow 15% of the total housing units to be accessible per established accessibility standards. So, okay, moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Councillor McCabe. So we can move this along to council for their approval. Great. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is our Housing Accelerator Fund, implementation and the spending plan. Over to you, Donna, or is it Mike? I assume it's you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just wait for the presentation to be placed up on the screen.
Spotlight.
Just dealing with a couple of technical glitches. We'll get to those momentarily. We're back in business.
All right, so the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the city's Housing Accelerator Fund implementation process and recommend an accompanying spending plan to support the agreed initiatives. So back in January of this year, the city executed an agreement with CMHC to enter into an agreement to implement 8 initiatives per the Housing Accelerator Fund program. And so today I'm going to bring you through some of the aspects that we will be undertaking to implement these 8 initiatives, and also some supporting activities that will be undertaken to support the overall initiatives. So in terms of goals and objectives, the hope of the city is that the implementation of the initiatives under the HAF program will increase the supply of affordable housing units within the next 3 years, and that it will enhance the diversity of housing options that are available in the city, that the aligned initiatives with the goals and objectives of the province housing strategy will come to fruition, and that this will overall ensure the sustainable and resilient housing development practices within the city that are in keeping with climate resilience. So through HAF, we went through and we broke out the initiatives that were put forward in the application that we submitted back in June 2023. And you see it's broken down according to year, initiative, milestone, the priorities, the date of commencement, date of completion, and the implementation progress so far. So in 2023, the priority initiatives that we undertook were to draft the new official plan and to commence looking at increased densities and increased building heights. Where we are in terms of the new official plan is we are at the final phase of drafting the document. And in terms of the initiatives or the milestone to increase densities and building heights, we are currently preparing the request for proposals. And then in 2024, we hope to continue the progress of the initiative implementation. And through these, the priorities are we will hold public consultations and engagement sessions to support, of course, all the different initiatives that we have proposed. And then in 2025, we hope to continue with the implementation of the initiatives that were started in 2023 and 2024, and also add a few new initiatives in terms of milestones, particularly the ADU incentive program, the e-permitting platform, and the new standards for development permits. So Initiative 1, which is implementing a new official plan and zoning development bylaw, as the committee is aware, we have started the update of the new official plan, and we are way down the wicket in terms of the implementation of that project. In terms of the zoning and development bylaw, we are now at the RFP stage where we're preparing the RFP to gain consultants to do the update of that. And these are some of the activities that we hope to undertake as we complete the update of the official plan and the amendment of the zoning and development bylaw. So we hope to hold public consultations and then go through the whole approval process to get those amendments brought into law. And then we intend to go through the drafting of the zoning and development bylaw. We hope to do public awareness and education campaigns. As we are aware, if we don't put the information out there so that citizens are aware of what we're doing, then we won't get buy-in and the inclusivity that we hope to achieve in this process.
Donna, sorry to interrupt. Could I ask you to go back just before you continue on with that? Can you go back to page 14 just for a second? Or Jason, sorry. No, that's good. That's it right there, yeah. So just under the 2025, publish, advertise, implement, and administer the policy. I was seeing policies about policy for redevelopment, guidelines for multi-unit dwelling, e-permitting system. Which policy are you referring to on that? See where it says 6.2, Initiative 6, Milestone 2? Publish, advertise, implement, and administer the policy? Which policy is that referencing?
So the policies that this is referring to, if you see in 2024, it also says publish and implement policies. So this is to do with the initiative, let me bring this up, to develop design guidelines for multi-unit dwelling complexes. and also to develop the multi-missing middle unit design requirements. So those policies will all fall into the general update of the zoning and development bylaw, and that's what that is referring to. So if you, just a bit of clarification. So the priorities are broken down according to milestones that are included in the application that we did to CMHC.
Yeah.
So what you have here is a breakout of all those milestones. So while it might not seem to be run coherently, it is. If you would look at the column that says initiative and then milestone. So you see initiative 6 in 2024, develop the multi-missing middle unit design requirements, and that is to be done to gain council's approval. If you look in 2025 and you see initiative 6, milestone 2, they all correspond.
Yeah, so the publishing in, under 2024, the publishing and implementing policies, that's in this, that's tagged to missing middle, correct?
Missing middle and the clarification of the design requirements.
Clarification of design requirements, okay. And then the policies in 2025 is related to the multi-unit complexes. Is that it?
Multi-mid,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. So initiative 2 is the ADU program, which is the accessory dwelling unit program. And through this initiative, it is intended that we will increase the housing supply through the provision of ADUs. And it's hoped that an incentive will also accompany this initiative, where $10,000 will be provided to each developer of an ADU. And this, we hope, will act as an impetus to probably get developers to facilitate this type of housing development throughout the city. And this is the program milestones and timelines for the ADU incentive program. Initiative 3 is the e-permitting system, and through this system, we hope to
Donna?
implement.
Could I just go back, can you just go back to 2? So the estimated cost, that's on page 17, 1.5 million. I thought originally under our proposal, it was 3.2.
So what
So-
we've done, Your Worship, through you, Madam Chair, since the agreement has been signed, is we've gone through and reassessed some of the costs that are associated with the different initiatives to come up with numbers that would be more in keeping with what we would be required to do, and also to ensure that we have funds to implement initiatives to support the original initiatives that we proposed in the application.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, again, just, so if we want ADUs to go ahead, see, we've run into this. We've been dealing with this now for 3 or 4 years. To build an ADU, or accessory building, on your property, the current bylaw requires that it's 1.5 acres. Now, Robert Stafford, who is with Open Practice, has submitted to this council, to this city hall, to Planning and Development Department, that if you reduce that 0.5 to 0.34, you could look at another 1,700 units. So we will have to change the bylaw, or are we going to allow ADUs on any property, any size acreage?
So through the implementation of the HAF program, there are a number of regulations in the zoning and development bylaw that will be assessed and updated to ensure that we're facilitating each initiative as best as possible. And that's one of those that will be looked at in terms of the size of the
Of the
lot
lot.
that ADUs are allowed on.
So we have to change that before we can do this.
So you'll see that this one is slated for completion in 2025.
Yeah.
So majority of the work that will be done to facilitate this program will be done through the update of the zoning and development bylaw.
And the 1.5 million is to develop or subsidize 150 ADU units, correct?
So originally, the agreement that was signed stated that we had to implement 100. However, it's capped at 150, so we can do between 100 and 150 in terms of the $10,000 that would be given for each ADU.
So is this consistent across the country? So if I lived in Toronto and I wanted to build an ADU, I'd get 10,000? Is that the standard, or do we know? Or do we just think that 10,000 would be, like to build an ADU, you'd be looking at, would it be 60, 70,000? They're not, it's
more
very
than that.
expensive. But what's,
So
What's-
this amount was decided in the application process by the persons that did the application. It's not something that is common across. You might find that some cities allow less and some cities allow more in terms of the incentive that is granted.
okay, so just the last question, Madam Chair. So the cap of 150, we put that on, or HAF is putting that on us? Who's?
Half is putting that
So
on us.
across the country, it's 150.
I'm not certain if across the country it's
Yeah.
150, but
Because in
that was
Toronto,
what
150
was
would be,
agreed
would be not
in
even a drop.
our agreement.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Madam Chair, too. So I had the same question about the lot reduction, so thank you for that. I do have another question. You and I, Don, are familiar with an area of it's like an accessory dwelling unit right now that does not conform to our bylaw. Without getting into specifics, I think you and I know the one we're referring to. Would this be, as we're revamping our zoning and development bylaw, if we're looking at the reduction from 0.5 to 0.34, is this the time that we would look at a situation like the one that you and I have had discussions about before and figure out at that time, how do we potentially because I think this fits with an ADU mindset or philosophy, whatever you will. It just doesn't fit our bylaw as it currently stands, so it doesn't work, and I get all that. So this would be the time when we're going through the updating of our official plan and our zoning development bylaw. If we're to look at secondary units or accessory dwelling units, whatever, this is a little bit bigger than an accessory dwelling unit, but it kind of is an accessory dwelling unit. It's very vague, so it's, anyway, this would be the time, if we're going to look at it, make something like that happen, to make it come to a realization, this would be the period that we would be looking at that.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Beck, yes, this is the time.
Okay, thank you.
So Initiative 4 is our parking strategy. And ever since the conversation began about the update to the official plan, the thought of removing parking minimums has always been topical. And through this parking strategy, we hope to do a complete assessment of the parking arrangements within the city and then amend the regulations in the zoning and development bylaw to accommodate all the different aspects that will come out of this parking strategy assessment.
So Don, just again, can we go back? I missed, I thought we didn't, you covered e-permitted, right? We didn't cover e-permitted, or did we jump ahead?
I
think we-
started it, sorry.
That's
but it
all right.
didn't- yeah.
You know what? We already know about e-permitting, but I can tell you this much, and I know Madam Chair would agree. I thought with the former manager, we had looked at the Canada Community Building Fund, which was the old gas tax. Remember that? To do this? So there must have been some blocks in place because the council of 2018 to 2022, we talked about e-permitting extensively, and we thought it was going somewhere, but obviously it looks like we're restarting. Are there any files that pertain back to that 2018, 2022, or they were lost in the shuffle or in the move?
Through you, Madam Chair, to your worship. So we do have a system in place in the Planning and Heritage Department. And while it might have probably facilitated some of the issues that were discussed back then, it does lack the ability to allow even intermunicipal interference with files. So it's just limited to the Planning and Heritage Department. And even if someone from the public would want to go on to see what's happening with their development permit application per se, they aren't allowed to do that. And so a staff member would have to do that on their behalf. So we want the system to be a complete system where it's really interactive and it's something that can be accessed by other members within the corporation outside of the Planning and Heritage Department, including the residents of the city. So it will also limit the interaction that we have through emails where we get requests for information, or someone just wants to know where the process is with their development permit applications. So this is intended to do that.
So, Madam Chair, so you're building on what we started in 2018-2022, right? Or are you starting at the first floor or 2 floors below and moving up?
While we'll use some of the existing bones, the software that we currently use is not very interactive. And so we might need to look into acquiring a separate software to facilitate this integrated e-permitting system.
So it's a multifaceted interface utility?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Initiative 5, and Councillor Beck brought this up earlier, is the redevelopment for higher density multi-unit apartments. And so through this initiative, we will encourage redevelopment of underutilized or vacant properties that can be used for higher density multi-unit apartment buildings. And also, this will be part of the overall update of the zoning and development bylaw process, as alluded to earlier. And again, the following slide outlines the milestones and timelines that we will consider in implementing this initiative.
Donna, did we finish the parking?
No, I backed her up, sorry, ma'am.
Oh, right. We'll go back to we didn't, sorry, we were asking too many questions. So, yeah, I don't think, Councillor Beck pointed that out, that I don't think we finished the parking. But anywho, we can finish the Initiative 5 first if you wish.
Okay. I think I'm there in terms of done. You can go back to the parking one, Jason, please. Forward or back to cover, what do you want to discuss? The milestones and timelines, or the overview of the initiative implementation?
Is this parking?
Yeah.
Yep. I just have a general question.
Okay,
Not,
go
not so much about the timelines, but, so with reduction or elimination or combination thereof of parking limits, is the idea to whatever would be used for parking gets used up for residential usage? Or is there a component of green space that would be used in lieu of the parking space? So let's say there's 200,000 square feet of parking. Can all of that be used to increase the density in the residential side of things, or does a certain component of that have? I'm just thinking of things like heat islands and that sort of stuff, like which has become kind of a thing, right? And is there a requirement that so much of that, if we're taking that out, okay, well, we're allowing so much has to be used for residential purposes, or so much has to be used for green spaces, or is there any kind of measures or parameters around that, I guess, if you will?
We are still developing the parameters in terms of what will be allowed and how the removal of parking minimums will be facilitated. And so we'll be looking at different strategies to ensure that parking is provided, but not necessarily at the rate that it currently is, where a large proportion, of the land or parcel that is used for a development is used for parking. So that's where the limit will be concentrated on. So for instance, currently we allow density bonusing for parking in lieu of parking. So that's the kind of strategies that we will be implementing. So although we will be eliminating parking or most of the parking, the other requirements will also have to be considered and in most instances will remain. Also, there are other strategies that could be considered to facilitate the urban heat island effect, where parking doesn't have to be concrete or asphalt in terms of the heat that comes from that, but they could actually look at other materials that would facilitate more sequestration of carbon and all of that. So it's an overall approach that we will be facilitating.
TBD. To be determined.
Just to follow up on that, Madam Chair. I think I like the quote you mentioned the other night there, Deputy Mayor Incup, when we were talking about the renovations to the Eastlink Multi-Use Sports Entertainment Centre, when, parking will find its place. But growing up around the corner from the Charlottetown Forum, where the Becks played hockey for many years, and being down the street from McLean's Funeral Home, when there was a big hockey game, when the Islanders were playing, like Angus Beck and all that crew, place would be packed, there'd be cars everywhere. And if there was a funeral up at McLean's Funeral Home of someone that was well-known, we couldn't park in front of her house. So I don't think we're going back to those times, because parking is, you can see it with what the malls have done, like the Royalty Crossing Mall, right? The shopping mall. Everybody always wondered why these big parking spaces, these large parking lots in front of these malls. Well, it was a marketing strategy, was that if you drove by and the parking lots were full, I'm not going in there, right? So it was actually, the concept was a great idea. But, when you'd go in there, the place would be full, but, well, the parking lot was only half full. What's this? So you can see what the APMs are doing by building on these parking lots, like they did at the Royalty Crossing with the Bank of BMO, and they're talking about adding residential units above the Cineplex because the parking's there. So I agree that, I think originally we looked at 0.75, we were going to reduce it to 0.75, 75% of what was required for an apartment unit or multi-unit dwelling unit. So, but our plan has to be tied into transit, has to be tied into walkability. Like, for example, today, and I saw the deputy, I had to go over to Parkdale Elementary School for an event. So I said, you know what, why am I going to take my car? I'll just take my e-bike. So you take your e-bike and you get accustomed to, wow, I can do this and still get from point A to point B to point C, back to point A, no problem. So I think when we're talking about the OP and drilling down to the zoning development bylaw about this parking strategy, that we're not just going to be looking at big parking lots, but we have to look at how we can make driving or getting between different points of where we're going by other means. That's what we have to stress, and I think that's becoming more and more obvious that climate change is not coming, it is here, and it's getting worse if we don't start reducing our carbon footprint. So I like what you're doing here, Donna. This is a good idea, and I think that, you know, developers will like it too, because we've heard many times, Madam Chair, from developers, too much requirement for parking, you know, and no one's used them. Well, if we can make it that they can build and add more density and maybe add more green space, all the better. Thank you. That was a statement.
Go back, please. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So this aspect also will be covered through the general update of the zoning and development bylaw. But this was a big aspect of CMHC's funding arrangements, where they spoke a lot about the missing middle. And this particular initiative, through this, we hope to satisfy that requirement and also to afford more housing solutions that are affordable within the city.
Yeah. Aren't we kind of ahead of the game on that? Am I understanding, like, don't we already have quite a bit of missing middle here in Charlottetown? Don't we, or we're doing, I guess if we're doing well in something in the housing side, we're kind of doing well on that missing middle piece? Like, I mean, there's always room for more, but am I correct in that, or is it
Just in certain areas.
just in certain
We've
areas?
done well in Brighton and in the 500 lot area, but when it comes to the royalties, I think that's where we have more to work on, but I'll
Gotcha.
turn that over to Donna.
No, that's good. That's fine.
So, Madam Chair, just in page 25, promote dispersion of affordable dwelling units by allowing a maximum of 20% of total dwelling units that are subject property to be eligible. That's above the 10%, right? I know in Vancouver, Vancouver Housing Corporation, Vancouver Area Housing Corporation, I think any new developments require at least 10%. We're looking at 20%? Am I reading that wrong? Like, can you clarify that?
No, you're reading it right.
Wow.
It's something that we want to approach and look at what other cities are doing to see how it fits. In implementation, if we realize that we're probably too high in the percentage that we're asking for, we'll reduce accordingly, but that's the number that we would want to encourage.
So, through the chair to Donna, Manager of Policy and Heritage. So right now, inclusionary zoning is, we don't have that. We can do it, but we don't have the powers within the act to do it. So the province has to be on board with this too, correct?
Yes, they
This, we
will.
can't do this on our own. We have to have provincial authority or enabling legislation through the Planning Act to allow us to do that, right?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. The other issue here is, do we use the provincial definition or do we use CMHC, which is 30% below the market value, or is it rent determined by income? Rent geared to income.
We would use CMHC's
Okay.
definition.
Thank you.
So Initiative 7 is to implement density bonusing and design standards for affordable units. While we already have some density bonusing regulations inputted in our zoning and development bylaw, we think we could go a bit further, and this is something that we will explore to see how we can amend and update the current regulations to facilitate more housing developments. And then Initiative 8, which is to remove exclusionary zoning and permit up to 4 units as of right as appropriate, is also something that we will consider in the overall update of the zoning and development bylaw. And specifically, we intend to enable 4-story buildings within an 800-meter radius of the major campuses, so UPI and Holland College, and also around Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And one aspect of this initiative is also to look at all the different environmental issues that we face in terms of, as we increase densities, all the other stuff that needs to be considered in terms of severe storm events and all the different environmental impacts that come with densification. And this is a map that will show like the general area within the 800-meter radius of the 3 properties that were alluded to earlier.
Can I ask a question about that? The Grey Group project at the old Maritime Christian College Center, that's 8 stories high, correct?
8 and
6
6 in the front, 8 in the back.
6 in the front, 8 in the back. So what we're saying here is we're saying within that, any of those 800-mile radius, or 800-meter radius, sorry, not 800-mile, we're saying 4 stories, but we're saying 6 stories along corridors and nodes. Like, is there I'm just wondering if we're saying across Grey Group where they're going 6 or 8 stories, should the 4 stories be, well, if we're looking, is there a rationale why we have 4 stories within an 800-meter radius, but then we're 6 stories along the corridors and nodes? Like, why don't we just, should we just have 6 stories if we say enable 6 stories within that 800-meter radius? Or is there a rationale, I guess, why we have 4 stories within that 800 meters, but then we allow 6 stories, enable 6 stories along the corridors and nodes? Is there a reason why we're at 4?
So the original thought in this one was that the increased densities would be along the transportation routes and also where the infrastructure is readily available. So that's the thought process around the 6 over the 4 along the corridors and within the nodes.
Okay, so if we were to, say we go with the enable the 4 stories, if you take the Grey Group situation, they would have to apply for a major variance again, much like they did in this situation? Like,
But
'cause-
But they would be along one of the major corridors.
okay, but there, which just happens to be within 800 meters of the campus. Okay, all right, okay, I'm okay. Good, thanks.
Okay, Madam Chair, just on page 29, it's like bingo. So the city will promote up to 4 units per existing lot as appropriate. That sounds like harmonious development. We used to have that, that's in the old bylaw, harmonious. Doesn't look like it's harmonious, so we better not do it. Anyways, I thought we were going to also add where technically possible. For example, I live in a corner of Vale and Spring Park Road, and it's a corner lot. For me to put an ADU there or to try to get 4 units unless I tear down the house and build up, it's pretty tight. So technically, construction-wise, probably couldn't do it. Is there some reason we just went with appropriate because it covers, it's a catch-all compared to technically?
It's similar in terms of technically feasible and as appropriate, because if you go with as appropriate as we did here, it gives us the opportunity to look at a number of things in terms of a case-by-case basis before we go forward with any approvals. So I think it's even more broad if you go with technically feasible as opposed to as appropriate. Because as appropriate also looks at all the different elements that comes under environmental considerations in terms of climate change and all that, and also to look at all the different areas that are prone to flooding within the city. So I think it covers more than if you had gone with technically feasible.
Donna, thank you, and thank you for going through this. This is a good exercise. Thank you.
Just one final comment on that as appropriate. On page 10, where we have a summary of the city agreed initiatives, just for consistency purposes, could we add as appropriate at the end of number 8? Just as someone's looking at if someone only read the report and nothing else, although it's indicated in the report at the back, the as appropriate, I think for consistency purposes, it might be worth a while to add that at the end of the city agreed initiatives. Permit up to 4 units as of right, comma, as appropriate, just so it's, again, consistent wording throughout the whole report and through the subsequent work that you did,
I concur.
which you did a great job on, Donna, by the way. Thank you for that,
Thank you, Donna.
and a great job explaining it.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for that.
So at the end, before you go, Madam Chair, is the half use of funds. So this outlines all the initiatives in terms of the 8 that we went through prior, and also the supporting activities that would help to facilitate the implementation of those agreed 8 initiatives. And the years of implementation, are also added, and the estimated spend on each line item.
Thank you for that. Is this going to be sent along to council for them to review? Or will you be presenting this at the next monthly meeting of council for questions? Or is this just for committee for today?
It's for committee and also for the committee to recommend to council that the implementation plan / spending plan be approved.
Okay.
And that the mayor and CEO will now execute accordingly.
Okay.
Moved.
Okay, so moved by his worship.
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor McCabe.
Yep.
So we'll move this along to council for final approval.
Yep.
Great.
Just on the GIS specialists. So we have 2 downstairs, don't we? You'll have your own GIS specialist? Is that what it
Yes.
is? Or do you have one down there now?
Through you, Madam Chair, to your worship, it's our intention to have one that is dedicated to the Planning and Heritage Department, as this is customary across most cities in Canada.
But they'll work with the other GIS specialists that are
They
here
will.
in City Hall. Yeah.
They
Okay.
will.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we should have a motion to adjourn.
Can I
Unless
just?
No,
you
ask
new
have-
the
business?
next- Yeah,
Thank you, everybody. Any new business first, as the peanut gallery kicks in? Okay, go ahead, Councilor
just
McCabe.
for maybe our next committee chair, if we could add dust control, what I had put in the email, dust control and the gravel issue in their city for discussion around what's already in place and if we could be looking at tightening up something in that area. And we know that the wording, as we see our zoning and development bylaw happening, there'll be some changes as we move into the planning board for improvement.
Yes, go ahead, Donna.
I just want to inform the committee that for comprehensive reasons, and we want to ensure that we don't do piecemeal amendments to the zoning and development bylaw at this moment, but that we wait and hold our requests, recommendations, and suggestions until we are finalizing the current zoning and development bylaw update.
Yeah, that makes sense. Except for Councilor McCabe said, except for the dust. I think we already have something existing in there. I think just needs to be clarified perhaps with the folks that aren't adhering to the dust.
So just from the other side of the peanut gallery?
Yes?
Donna, we've looked at this whole naming of streets and roads. It's all over the place. I just want to put that back on the agenda, maybe to do a little more. Like, give you an example. Canadian Tire made a huge contribution to the city of $1 million for a piece of playground equipment out at Victoria Park. And the manager was asking me about that section between Spencer and Tower to name that Can Tire Drive. Anyways, it slipped through the cracks, and it's called Edgecombe. Is it Edgecombe? Edgecombe, which relates, there's an historic connection there with that area. I just want to bring that up at a future discussion. It doesn't have to be the next meeting. This always comes up, we can't have two names, can't have one with a hyphen. Anyways, it's just something I want to review. And again, it's
That's
not.
great.
It's separate from the zoning and development bylaw and the official plan,
It's- yeah,
which
we
is a living document.
Yeah, we have a street naming policy, so you want to have a look at whether or not this would meet that criteria. Okay, so, motion to adjourn, moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by Councilor Beck. Okay, thank you all. See you in a few minutes.